we try to mock the database calls and we are trying to expect what kind of data we are trying to return, and then trying to call the API main response, how it should be and all. And for this, we created the function here and we try to expect the response from this. And then we are trying to call the main function, means that is an API call. And then we are trying to expect the response from this, like what is the status code and the response, what we try to get here. And then what we try to pass, is this matching or not? This is what we are trying to expect here. And what else if the response is 404, it is like a 201. And now when the record is already present, we try to get like a 404 status, and how we try to mock that one, and then trying to call the response with this kind of error message. How we try to do this mocking and all, we try to see. Hello, hi everyone. We will try to see how to mock the database calls using just module. To do this, I done a small API call. If you see this one, this is what I'm trying to demo here. This is the API call. If API V1 users, this is the endpoint I try to create. With this endpoint, what we are trying to achieve is we are trying to create users data. It means that I gave name as an email, that is the user data. And when we do like a send, we are trying to hit the database and then trying to store the data into database. This is the response which we are trying to get. What else if the user is already existing? So we are trying to get the error message as email is present. So this is what we are trying to mock the actual database call, and we will try to test the API which we had written in the backend. When we go to the code now, this is like an user.js file. Here is the main API call of create user and get user. We are going to see the first like a create user. This is where what we had seen in the Postman trying to call, it will try to hit this function create user. And then if the email is already present, then it tries to go to here and it will return the error message, this one. And if the user is not existing, then it will try to do the save operation. This is DB call operation we are trying to do. And then we are trying to store the data into database, and then we are trying to respond with success message. And if there is any error, we are trying to do with the catch. So this is what we are trying to do, the testing with using the just module, and we are trying to mock the actual database calls, and we are trying to see what are the kind of responses we are getting on top of those if we send different kind of name. Example, if we are not sending an email, if there is any more information, example, as of now there is only name and email, but in actual project there will be more information like name, email, so many additional fields will be there. What else if one is required, one is not required? In this case, what type of we need to expect when we give example name and when we are not giving email, what kind of messages we are trying to expect? So those things we can try to test it out here. First thing is like I'm going to show you that how I try to mock the database call. This is the jest module. Already I had demoed related to the jest module, related to the setup and how we can start the jest module. These are the one API call mock and API call mock to. These are the, in these sessions, I had already demoed how to do the setup and all, and the initial calls and all. Now, that is the reason I'm trying to going directly to this describe one. So this is like a just module we are trying to use here. And this is like a describe, writing the test case with a describe. And then in this, I am trying to do like it dot. So this is like a one type of test case only I had written to execute these. Apart from any other file, I'm trying to execute only these things. That is the reason I try to write only. If you see, I had written 3 test cases here. So these are the 3. In the describe, I had written what are the main things. So here, if you see, should create details here, and should throw error as user email already present, should fetch details. These are 2 related to one API, and this is another API. Now I will try to demo like a first one first. So in this, I will try to put the API call also, which we had written. This is the one. This is a create user. We are trying to call the create user here. Before trying to call the create user, I try to mock the database call. Here, user.find1. If you see this, this is the database call. And I am trying to give here the response as a null from this API call. It means that we are sending the email as per this code, and we will try to get example. If the email is not present, we are trying to get the null. So what is the expected response from the database you are thinking, then we are trying to give here. So I gave here null. It means that the email ID which I am trying to pass here is not present in the database. That is what I am trying to say here without calling the database. This main idea of this line is like, I'm not trying to call the database directly. I'm trying to mock the database call and trying to give a null as the response for this line of code. So it won't go to this kind line of code and will execute null here in this place, and it will try to mock that database call. And then as it is not existing, it won't even go here also. And then it goes to these lines here. If you see a save, so this save method, if you see user.prototype.save, I am trying to mock this with these details. It means that these details got saved. It shows the name and email, mocked name, mocked email. These are the details got stored in the database. It says this thing. So it is not trying to call the actual database and trying to store, but it is trying to mock the response, what database is gonna give, what we are trying to save here, it try to give here. And then I'm doing the function call here. This is the main function call. Means before calling the function call, whatever we try to mock, those we need to mock. And first we have to do this calls and all before only whatever we try to mock. And then we are trying to call the actual call. After this, when we do hit the create user, based on the data, whatever we are sending the request here, this is the request. So here we are gonna get request.body.email, right? So here, this is the request I'm sending, request.body.name and email. So here I'm sending the request and response. So I'm sending what kind of response I'm expecting from this and what kind of request I'm sending. So here, if you see, this is like a response. Here I'm trying to give status as true and data, name, mocked email. So if you see if you had seen the API call here, when we do the same response, we are trying to add it there. It is like a 12, and if you see like a 12 here, this is a new record and we are giving email and a name. So here and status, if you see status 2, and it is like a data, and then data has an object. So here we are trying to give like a status and data as an object and name and email. And then we are, I'm trying to mock the status here. So if you see this, after that we are trying to return the status, right? The status also I have to mock. So for that reason, I am trying to mock the status. and I'm trying to return the response on top of the JSON. What we are trying to give the response that I am trying to return in the JSON here. This is like a create mock response. This response I am trying to send. This is the request and this is the response. I'm trying to call the create user. From this, we are trying to expect the status code as 201 and then created dot data to be equal to means I should get the data in the response data, and then this will be equal to name and email. So what I try to mock here as it is like a stored, and I am expecting this should be equal to this. This is what we had done, and I can do like a it dot only here, and we can run this test case. When I run this test case now, we can see what is the created user. So here we can see the created user and the data what we try to give in the response. This is the request we are sending basically. And the response what we are trying to get is this one. This is the one which we are trying to see here. This is like I gave wantedly here a mocked name, mocked email. So whatever we are trying to give here, the response that we are trying to get it here. This is where we try to mock the database calls and trying to expect the response how it should, like example status. In this example, if I pass like a 200, is this correct or wrong? It will give us this. If you see the received is 201. Based on this, we had sent all the details correctly. Then it should get the status as 201, but we are expecting is 200. So this, when we done a big changes in the projects and all, these test cases will really help a lot. And when we do this test case run, then we can see this is like a status is correct. And then we are trying to see the 2 equal to. This is like a simple test case as of now, but the main idea is like mocking of the database call. But when we go to actual project, we have a lot of validations. So those validations and all we can expect when we are not giving the expected response, how it respected request, if we are not giving, then what kind of response we are trying to get, and we can expect those and we can return. And if we see this is like a success thing, and if we go to the one, if we want to throw the error example, if the user is already existing and we are trying to pass that email ID, in this case, what should happen? I am trying to run this test case now. So in this test case, I have written, if I am trying to pass the email as same as what we are trying to request, it means that before in this test case, I try to pass null, means there is no user existing with this email. It is trying to give this line of code that is the reason I gave here null in the assumption. Now in this assumption, I am trying to say that there is an existing user already in database and database will return this to me. That is the reason what the database is trying to return, that I gave here name as a name comma email. So it means that it try to find in the database and it try to give this response. This is what this line of code is trying to say. And then we are trying to go here, and this is like a save. I just mocked this. Before even this, we are trying to come out of this thing. I will show you how we are doing this logic here. This is the like what I'm trying to mock. The response is that we can see here existing users mock response, and this is like a email is present, and what the error message we try to show up in the Postman, same error message I try to paste here. And this is where I try to say like is because how we are taking the status and JSON. Based on that, I try to give response.status and then on top of that JSON. In the JSON, I try to pass the response. So in this, what we try to do is that I'm trying to send the response and I'm trying to send a request. This request this is the one. In this, what we are trying to get, created user is, it not try to create the user because there is an name and email is already present with this email ID what we try to send. If I try to run this test case, it will give 404. And this is the error message. If you see, I not marked anywhere like a status and all. Based on the information what we try to send, and it is going here and it is trying to return what the status. And I am expecting what the status is. It is like a 404 I expected. In this case, if I give like a 200 now, and then if I try to send the test case, now we can see expected is 200, but we are trying to get on 404. So 404 is like an expected for this. So in this way, we can try to test the logic what we had written. What is the expected error messages also in case error field maybe not present. And you will, example, now as of now, we try to structure the error response like this. And we gave to them front end or the one dependencies on these API calls in this pattern. Okay, these are like a error and message. In case in tomorrow, any case, if we not sending error message, and if we try to change this object, how we are sending, immediately these test cases will fail. So it shows that there is some kind of break is going to happen based on the changes what you had done in the future when we do this kind of changes. So these are the usage of like a test cases when we write, and how we are trying to mock the database calls. These are the ones, and this is like the one I try to do one more API call like a get users, trying to get all the users from the database. Once we get, and we are trying to return the response. So here, the one which we had seen above, it's the same here. User.find. Here, this is the database called user.find. And I'm trying to get all of the results. So I not give any condition here. So based on this line, we are trying to see here all of the results from the database, whatever is present related to the user information, we are trying to see here. And when I try to send it out here, you can see these are the results which we are getting from database based on this query. I am trying to mock here the query which we had written here and saying that the results is like an array of objects. So these are like an array of objects here, and here we are trying to give an array of objects. And if you observe the previous query here, it is just an object. It is not an array of object. And this is user.find1. And now, according to the get users API, we are using user.find. It means here I'm trying to mock user.find. And here I try to mock user.find1. And this is the query here. This is an array of objects. And this is an API response mocking. Here I try to give an array of objects. And before we gave, as we discussed just now, this is like just an object. Status true and data. And here it is status true and data is like an array of objects. This is the status we are returning on top of like a JSON. If we go to the test case here get users is the main call which we are trying to do. The API call get users of request comma response. I am sending the request is same, and response is the one which we try to mock the response here. And then we are trying to do an API call. After this, we are gonna see the response what we are trying to get here. So if I try to hit this, as I gave only, only this test case will run. And in this, we can see the data, what I try to give here, an array of objects, those came. Before it is, if I try to run this, and if I make this thing. If I try to run this, you can see what kind of data we can return in that. So here, if you observe, it is just an object, but here the response is an array of objects. So based on that, you can validate what kind of responses you are trying to expect. So here it is it dot only if I give, and then based on that, you can try to expect what we are getting. So if I try to run this, and this is the response we are trying to send, and this is the expected array of objects here. And if I try to change the status code here from 200 to 201, it will throw an error now. If you see, this is an expected, but received is 200. This is not correct. So 200 we are going to give. When these will be useful is when we in upcoming, if we try to do any kind of changes in this API, and in case if we are not sending data, maybe by mistake, or if we are changing the structure of the data, then these test cases will fail. In this case, we will get to know what kind of breaks we can expect. So example, with this API, there is some kind of dependencies based on this API, right? So the data what we are providing from this API, in that case, the data who are using data, like whatever the response we have provided based on this API, the things will get break when we change the structure. So that we will get to know, and what are required fields, what are non-required fields. We can do the validations here, whether the code what we had written is working correct or not. So those kind of test cases we can write, and we can test it out here. And I will push this code to the GitHub, and I will post the link in the comment. You can go to that GitLab if you want to refer this code. Thank you.